I'm really nervous because it's wild that what was tossed out was physical evidence that we now have clearer idea of. So once again, like with the original trial, everything is resting on witness testimony, and that is really, really scary.
That's Maggie Freeling, co-producer and host of Season 3 of the Bowen Valley podcast. Her reporting focuses on the murder of Jessica Currin in Mayfield in 2000 and the eventual conviction of Quincy Cross in 2008. Her reporting found what she believes are serious issues with the investigation from the very beginning. The eventual trial relied almost exclusively on the testimony of two young women, Victoria Caldwell and Venetia Stubblefield. Both of those witnesses and multiple others have since recanted their testimony.
I mean, it's been decades of fighting for both families because, as we all know now, the Currins really saw it right after the conviction that something was wrong.
Now, a new trial is possible for Quincy Cross. And others convicted in relation to Currin's murder could see a fresh start. I talked to Maggie just minutes before an evidentiary hearing, exploring new evidence that has come to light since Cross's last appeal.
It took so many people, so much investigation, so much pressure, all different kinds of media, all different kinds of investigators to get here. It is huge.
From an unexpected recantation to new accusations against investigators, this week on the Crossroads Suncast, we're digging into the testimony.
We've gotten to a point where they have been manipulated and lied to by so many people with so many different stories that we don't even know if they know the truth at this point. I'm really worried about today, but I'm hopeful they'll do the right thing.
What was said on the stand, what it means for the case, and how it reflects broader concerns in the criminal justice system.
They're allowed to lie. They're allowed to overstate the strength of the evidence. They're allowed to talk about witnesses that have turned the person in that don't exist.
This episode deals with violence and references sexual assault. The story of Jessica Currin's murder is long and complex, with a lot of different players. For a full breakdown, check out our previous episode covering the history of the case and the lead up to this evidentiary hearing. Here's a quick overview. Jessica Currin's body was found badly burned behind Mayfield Middle School in summer 2000. She was just 18 years old, mother to an infant son. There are immediate issues with the investigation.
Emily Rourke with the Bryant Law Center represented one of the accused in the 2008 trial.
That crime scene was disrupted time and time again, just from nature. And you would be in that crime scene within seconds, within minutes, and nobody was. And even after they got there, it wasn't taken care of properly.
The case is thrown out because of those issues with evidence. Eventually, Kentucky State Police and then the Kentucky Bureau of Investigation take over. But similar issues repeat.
They had never done a murder case before.
Historically, KBI agents Lee Wise and Bob O'Neill had dealt with suspects in narcotics cases. They used the same methods to push suspects and potential witnesses hard in these interrogations.
These two people came down from the Attorney General's office, and they dealt with drugs. They dealt with fraud. They didn't, in dealing with a big-time drug dealer, it's totally different.
The tactics of the KBI are a running theme in recantations.
I'm saying this is the testimony they wanted me to say. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Over time, with the help of amateur investigator Susan Galbraith, investigators settle on a new theory of the case with a new set of suspects. Victoria Caldwell and Currin's cousin Venetia Stubblefield become the star witnesses in the 2008 trial of Quincy Cross. Here's Caldwell reading from a journal entry she claimed to have written in 2000.
It says, "Damn, they found the body. I hope they don't find out it was us."
Here's WPSD evening co-anchor Jennifer Horbelt reporting on that testimony at the time.
You'd think with two eyewitnesses, Venetia Stubblefield yesterday, Caldwell today, there would be no room for doubt that Cross murdered Jessica Currin, but their stories about what happened to Jessica don't quite match up. Caldwell said today that Jessica Currin and Venetia Stubblefield were at her house when Quincy Cross picked them up, but Stubblefield claimed Jessica was walking home when she was picked up by Cross.
There are a range of key differences and details, but here's the general outline of Victoria's testimony in the 2008 trial. Victoria says she was hanging out with some other Mayfield teenagers on a July night in 2000. That includes Jessica Currin and Currin's cousin, Venetia Stubblefield. Victoria Caldwell says they got in a car with her older cousin, Tamara Caldwell, Tamara's boyfriend, Quincy Cross, and Jeff Burton, a boy they knew from school. Both Victoria Caldwell and Venetia Stubblefield testified they got high in the car, taking a range of drugs. Reaching the driveway of Jeff Burton's house, Caldwell says Cross reaches under the seat and pulls out a small bat and hits Jessica over the head with it. They carry Currin into the house, unconscious. In Victoria's telling, her cousin Tamara helps the two men sexually assault and beat Jessica. Caldwell says Quincy Cross strangled Jessica to death, then told the girls to perform sexual acts on Currin's body to implicate them in the murder. Jessica's body is left in Burton's garage for days, until they take the body to the middle school to dump and burn it. Two others, Austin Leach and Isaac Benjamin, are also indicted for helping to burn Jessica's body. Cross was eventually convicted based on the testimony of Victoria Caldwell, Venetia Stubblefield, and others, though there was no physical evidence. Both Victoria Caldwell and Venetia Stubblefield received sentences for their role. Tamara Caldwell and Jeff Burton both take Alfred pleas. That means admitting there's enough evidence to convict them without admitting guilt. Both Victoria Caldwell and Venetia Stubblefield have since recanted their testimony. Here's Caldwell on the stand on November 26th, listening to her own recantation.
I was never there, never witnessed anything. Okay. But the dear guy, he was known to do a lot of things, but he also bragged about it, what he did to Jessica though. But they kind of brushed him off. It was like they wanted Quincy for so long.
Do you recognize the female voice in that clip that we just played for you? Yes.
Multiple others have come forward in recent years, including one witness who surprised the prosecution by recanting on the stand. But the November hearing had a narrow focus. Any evidence had to be new, meaning it could not have appeared in previous appeals by Cross. And the evidence had to be strong enough that it could have impacted the outcome of the 2008 trial. Day 1 of the hearing, November 25th, 2 days before Thanksgiving. Venetia Stubblefield takes the stand wearing a sweater emblazoned with the face of a tiger on the front and back. Quincy Cross, still in his orange jumpsuit, sits with his attorneys from the Kentucky Innocence Project. To their left, the original prosecutor in the case, Barbara Maines Whaley, sits with her team. There's a moment early in the day where Cross turns in his seat, looking 10 or 15 feet behind him to smile at his family in the second row. Venetia, whose testimony was so instrumental in putting him in prison for the last 17 years, sits another 10 or 15 feet in front of him. The first day of the hearing focuses on her testimony.
Do you recognize this at all, this conversation?
Her testimony is marked by long pauses and struggles remembering key details.
Venetia, do you recognize this after reviewing it a little bit?
Some of it, but not all of it.
That includes struggles in remembering the testimony she gave during the 2008 trial, and struggles remembering her recantation in 2023. Stubblefield does say she remembers the way she was treated by KBI agents Wise and O'Neill.
The drug pipe or whatever that they had found in my mother's purse, that they had put in my mother's purse, to be exact. That it was supposed to be that we both died in prison and right in there by lethal injection.
And she says KBI agents told her what to say.
Do you recall them telling you that their interrogation of you was an open book test like you took in high school?
Yeah, see, Lee was the one that spoke up and said that.
Do you recall him telling you that they had all the answers and they needed to hear them from you?
Yes, he did.
At times, Stubblefield shuts down on the stand. She pauses, shrinking into herself and staring down at the desk with a hand on her forehead. She describes her personal history with mental health and disability.
Venetia, do you have any intellectual disabilities?
Yes, I do.
And what are those?
I suffer from ADHD, ADD. I suffer from manic bipolar, PTSD, or anxieties, and I have a comprehension disorder.
Comprehension disorder. Do you have trouble understanding things?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall telling law enforcement investigators during your interrogations in this case that you had trouble with your memory?
Yes, I do.
She also describes a phone call with former Kentucky State Police Trooper Michelle Kent. She says Miss Whaley, the prosecutor then and now, was present during the call. When the prosecution takes over, Whaley hammers Stubblefield on the details of her past testimony.
How did you remember all these details to testify about when none of it ever happened?
And her inability to recall key elements of her recantation in July 2023.
You don't know where in the jail you met. Or you don't know if it was on July 31st.
At times, the exchange gets heated.
Oh, I don't recall saying in the trial, and I don't recall the question being asked to me on that.
3 times I've been trying to hear what her question is, and you won't let her ask the question.
At one point, Stubblefield watches a video of her 2008 testimony and questions the veracity of the video.
But they could have been fabricated video, because I don't remember demonstrating anything like that.
The prosecution also noted her lack of appeals on her conviction previously, and that she apparently never told her lawyer she'd been threatened by investigators. That lawyer was disbarred in 2017. Stubblefield could be called back for the next day of the evidentiary hearing, set for December 18th.
Caldwell, this is Morgan Wiggins. Understand that you are on speakerphone and you're being recorded right now. Yeah.
The second day of the hearing starts with a phone call from the star witness in the 2008 trial, Victoria Caldwell. She did not show up for the first day of the hearing, citing health issues. The first witness on the second day is Shamika Powell.
I went to school that day to pick up my school schedule, and that's how I found out that it was her.
A middle school student at the time of the murder, Powell says she was interrogated by investigators multiple times as a teenager. Her cousin is Venetia Stubblefield. In the 2008 trial, Powell testified to a chance meeting with Quincy Cross, who was dating her best friend, Shanna Morgan, at the time. She said he made comments about murdering Jessica Currin in that meeting. In 2008, she also testified that she'd been threatened by Cross. In the evidentiary hearing, she walked back some of her prior testimony.
To this day, have you ever had a conversation with Mr. Cross?
No.
But she also repeatedly took the fifth when asked about her 2008 testimony and her interviews with law enforcement.
Is it true that in the past you have spoken with law enforcement officers regarding the death of Jessica Currin?
I'd like to plead the fifth on that.
Did any law enforcement officer ever share information with you about Jessica Currin's murder?
Yeah.
What did they share with you?
That Quincy Cross murdered her is what it said.
When she is willing to talk about her interviews with law enforcement, she describes intense pressure.
I was in and out of the jail, and I had a daughter. My parents were drug dealers, and I was threatened with getting my daughter took from me. If I didn't say this, I was threatened to, my parents were threatened.
She also described pressure from her friend Shanna Morgan to implicate Quincy. Eventually, Judge Tyler Gill steps in.
I'm going to order that you answer the question because, given your other testimony, I found that you have waived your Tenth Amendment rights as to that issue.
The central issue here? Perjury. Here's Emily Rourke.
Perjury is a Class D felony. If you do it in a court of law under oath, it carries 1 to 5 years in prison. These are people that maybe don't have a lawyer, don't know what's going to happen if they change their story, and they're trying to help people that they've known. They're trying to correct something that's happened in the past that's wrong, and even if they're doing the right thing, are they going to be prosecuted for it?
Back in court, the prosecution wants to know why it's taken so long for Powell to come forward.
I'm not gonna, go and say something else and then get myself in trouble for perjury or whatever because I was told to say this is not something that I heard on my own or whatever the case may be. Why would I do that? I just wanted to live my life. I feel really awful because I was told to say things that weren't true, which could put me in perjury.
Powell says her cousin Venetia talked about the Currin case a lot.
Do you recall testifying at Mr. Cross's trial that Venetia changed her story 1,000,000 times when she was talking to you?
I really recall saying that she did.
The prosecution once again focused on the level of detail in Powell's testimony at trial, specifically highlighting the year that had passed between Powell's last interview with law enforcement and her testimony at trial.
You provided a lot of detail about that event. Mm-hmm. The weather, what pants you were wearing, a lot of detail. And you just confirmed that that's true. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying, isn't it also true that Quincy Cross approached you that day?
No. And if he's the innocent, then you don't need to be in jail at all.
He's probably going to do the rest of his life because he killed his baby mama.
Daryl Montgomery, the next witness to take the stand. He says he met Jeremy Adams in the McCracken County Jail in 2000. In Montgomery's account, Adams was talking loudly about having killed the mother of his child several cells down. Remember, Adams is the father of Currin's son, and he was one of the first suspects arrested in relation to her murder. His case was thrown out because of issues with evidence.
He said that he had got into it with a police officer because she was supposed to have been pregnant by the police officer. They later come up and just talked and discussed something and said that he would take care of Jeremy for taking care of the business.
Montgomery says Adams never said the name of the woman he killed, but he put together the details years later when he was dating a woman named Jessica Lindsay. This could get confusing, so I'll try to keep the names clear. Jessica Lindsay was friends with Jessica Currin, and at one time, she was married to Jessica Currin's brother. She and Montgomery start dating, and eventually she mentions a woman killed and burned by the school.
She said that Quincy had done it, and I was like, no. I said, I remember that like yesterday, Jeremy was acting all silly in the jail saying that he had done it.
Montgomery also says he dropped Jessica Lindsay off to be interviewed by KBI officers. She went on to testify at trial. Montgomery wasn't able to explain why she wouldn't have mentioned his story during the trial. The Commonwealth also found other issues with his testimony and his signed affidavit that alleges the conversation with Jeremy Adams.
If you need to reread this, you can, but best I can tell, there's no mention of Jeremy Adams mentioning the body being burned. You agree with that?
Montgomery says he actually met Quincy Cross in prison around 2012 or 2013, when Cross was talking about being falsely imprisoned. He also says his sister knew Cross in Tennessee years before his arrest. When prosecutors asked why Montgomery hadn't come forward until this year, he said he initially thought Adams was already serving time for Currin's murder, and he cited a distrust of law enforcement. Montgomery is currently serving a 22-year sentence.
Part of what Jeremy Adams told you was that he was in cahoots with the law enforcement to commit this murder. You could help solve a murder, you could stick it to law enforcement, and potentially knock some of that 22 years off, and you told them, oh, that. That's your testimony?
Yeah.
Okay.
They told me they were going to ship me down the river and that I was going to get the lynch but I didn't tell the truth.
And what did you understand they meant by tell them the truth?
Me admitting that I had something to do with killing Jessica.
That's Tamara Caldwell. Remember, her younger cousin is Victoria Caldwell, the state's star witness in the 2008 trial. Tamara took an Alford plea at the time, accepting a sentence without admitting guilt. She never testified in 2008. In a pre-hearing in October, the judge ruled against allowing Tamara to testify because of her Alford plea. But she was allowed to take the stand on the second day of the hearing. She says she never even knew Quincy Cross at the time of Jessica Currin's murder.
I met him in 2002.
And how did you meet him in 2002?
I met him in the RC Center here in Mayfield, Kentucky.
That's a correctional center. Caldwell says she was interrogated by investigators about the murder twice. First, by Kentucky State Police troopers Jamie Mills and Brent White. Mills was fired by a state police trial board in 2005 for dishonesty and interfering with an official investigation. In 2007, Caldwell says she was picked up from her home by Kentucky State troopers and brought to the Drury Inn and Suites in Paducah. She could not identify the troopers that transported her there.
I had to be in there a long time because when they came and got me, it was at the afternoon. When they took me up to interrogate me, I know it was 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
She ends up in a hotel room to be interrogated by KBI agents Bob O'Neill and Lee Wise. She's in her late 20s and has young children at home. There's no lawyer present.
They started interrogating me and telling me if I didn't tell the truth that I was going to be shipped down the river and I was going to get the electric chair and I was never going to see my kids again.
And did you tell Lee Wise and Bob O'Neill the truth?
Yes, I did.
What did you tell them?
I told them that why you keep asking me things, because I don't know anything, so I can't tell you anything.
Were there ever any times that the agent stopped the recording during your interrogation?
Yes.
Did they speak with you during the times that the recording was off?
Yes.
How did the agents treat you during the interrogation?
Like I was trash.
Did they ever make any physical contact with you?
Yes, they did.
What did they do?
The tall one, Bob, I think it was Bob O'Neill, he slide his hand up under the table and put his hand on my leg and, start caressing my leg. Said, telling me everything's gonna be okay. You just tell us everything's gonna be okay.
So, how did you feel about Father O'Neill putting his hand on your leg?
Wrong.
Did he rub it?
Yes, he was caressing my leg.
Here's Maggie Freeling.
When I was at Tamara's house last year interviewing her, I played the interrogation video she was talking about today, where the cops, the KVI agents, go under the table and touch her leg. She was showing me the spot in the video that happens and what they were talking about when that happened. And I asked her, I was like, what is it like watching this? Because she was also just heartbreaking. She just looks like a little girl. And she was like, I feel bad for her. She's like, I feel bad for that girl.
When the prosecution takes over, they ask Tamara if she would have told her attorney about those threats. They give her a transcript where she's being read her Miranda rights.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can will be used against you in the court. You have the right to have the attorney before making any statements. And you have one, you may have your attorney with during questioning.
Do you understand these rights? That you don't have to talk. That if you want an attorney, you can have one here. And do you understand? And on page 2 at the top, what did you answer?
Yes.
That you did understand.
I want to pause here for a moment. At this point in the hearing, we've heard allegations of threats from law enforcement, turning the recording on and off, and even touching a witness. So I wanted to know, what are the guardrails on these kinds of interrogations? Here's Southern Illinois University Simmons Law School professor Chris Behan.
A person is supposed to get a Miranda warning, and they have the opportunity to have counsel and to end the interrogation at any time. A really good police investigator can make a Miranda warning seem like a very trivial thing to wait. And they do. They're very friendly. And look, let's take care of this. The person will waive Miranda rights. I found as a criminal defense attorney, one of the most frustrating things was how often my clients would waive their rights, not really understanding what they were getting into.
Here's Emily Rourke. She says she sees a lot of cases where clients don't understand their rights, and law enforcement toes the line.
People will say, yeah, I think I need a lawyer. And they'll say, well, are you sure you want to do that? You sure you don't want to think about that? Because once you call him, we have to stop talking.
Investigators in the United States have a lot of leeway to approach interrogations as they see fit.
And they're allowed to actually falsify evidence. They're allowed to lie. They're allowed to overstate the strength of the evidence. They're allowed to talk about witnesses that have turned the person in that don't exist, all sorts of things. And so that creates further anxiety on the part of the person being interrogated.
The most common method of criminal interrogation in the U.S., the Reid technique, was popularized in the 1950s. Interrogators present what's called a maximalized view of the evidence. As you just heard, that creates a lot of pressure on the suspect being interviewed. The other side, a minimalization technique.
What the interrogator does is offer themselves as the way out. If you are honest with me, if you are truthful with me, I can help you. And let's talk about some ways that you can get out of here. And let's say we're dealing with a terrible murder case of a family member, for instance. An interrogator might say, we know that you killed your mother. We also understand that you had a difficult relationship with your mother and that she'd been abusive and that maybe things got a little bit out of hand during the argument. Maybe you did something in anger that you're ashamed of now. Let's talk about that.
Proponents say the Reid technique has an 85% accuracy rate. Critics say it's unclear whether or not it's actually that accurate. Behan says 1/4 of all exonerations of wrongful convictions involve a false confession. There are specific populations that are especially at risk of false confessions under this kind of pressure.
Juveniles have, of course, not a fully developed psyche yet. They're psychologically immature. They may not understand much about their rights at all. And it's very easy for them to be manipulated into have their will overborne. People with low IQs and maybe some cognitive disabilities don't fully understand what's going on, although they may be capable under constitutional standards of being brought to trial and participating in their own defense. And then, of course, people with mental illnesses fall all along a bunch of different spectrums. And there may be a variety of different reasons why these techniques can result in false information.
As far as turning cameras on and off, Kentucky does not require that interrogations are recorded.
That is within the purview of police to turn it off or on. And that's actually a technique, right? You turn it off for a few minutes. You're like, okay, look, the tape's off. Could be another minimization technique, actually. Let's talk about what really happened, all right? Let's just, man to man, this isn't being recorded. The danger, of course, is that there can be greater threats that are levied when the recording is off, and there's no real way to prove what happens when the recording is off, other than the testimony of two interested parties, right? The interrogator and the defendant.
It's early afternoon when law enforcement starts to testify.
During your investigation case, did you have any interactions with Venetia Stubblefield?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, who was she?
At the time, she was a person of interest. I interviewed her probably numerous times. I didn't tell you how many times.
That's Jamie Mills, formerly with Kentucky State Police. He joined the investigation in 2003. He only testified briefly, describing his impressions of the women who went on to testify at trial in 2008. Just a quick note, that's not the same Jamie Mills that serves as a McCracken County judge.
Personally, I deemed her all over the place.
He says Venetia told a range of stories during their interviews.
Because she kind of, during the multiple times I'd interviewed her, I pretty much got a different story each time that I interviewed her.
Mills says Venetia never told him she was present when Jessica Currin was killed. He also describes one phone interaction with Victoria Caldwell during his time on this investigation. He says she didn't trust him and didn't say much, but she also didn't implicate herself in the murder. Mills is released, and the defense calls Tim Fortner, the original Mayfield Police Department investigator on the case. Judge Tyler Gill says Fortner's testimony is not relevant to the current proceedings and releases him. The Commonwealth calls former Kentucky State Police trooper Michelle Kent. In March 2007, she drove to Marysville, Ohio, with KBI agent Bob O'Neill. The goal? Finding Venetia Stubblefield and bringing her back for questioning.
And they needed a female officer to drive her back all the way to Kentucky.
On the way back, they drop Agent O'Neill in Louisville.
We got something to eat or drink before we left Louisville. And then she, in fact, went to sleep and slept the entire trip back while I drove. And I remember that night particularly because it actually was some really bad lightning storm on our way back.
Kent says she knew very little about the Currin case going into her interrogation of Venetia, and she testifies that they did not talk about the case during the drive.
I knew nothing about this case outside of Jessica Currin was killed. And I did that on purpose because it kind of has like you handle a child abuse interview. I didn't want to know so that what she told me was raw and open. Does that make sense? So that whatever she told me, if it was fresh to me. During the general questioning, such as her age, places she lived, things like that, she was very open and her feet were on the ground, hands were on the table, and she would look at me. When we began to discuss, or when she began to open up about Jessica Currin's murder, she pulled her feet up onto the chair, wrapped her arms around her legs, and began to rock in the chair. She was basically sitting in a fetal position.
Did you mention Quincy Cross to her at all?
No, I didn't know who Quincy Cross was. This case was kept under lock and key in the lieutenant's office at Post 1.
Partway through the interrogation, she says she brought in fellow trooper Sam Steeker to assist. Kent says she never suggested any testimony to witnesses or pressured them to give any specific account of events. But Venetia says Kent pressured her to lie. Here's her testimony from a day earlier.
Why did you not tell Michelle Kent the truth? Because she was interrogating him and intimidating him.
The defense pushes Kent on the elements of the Reed technique, maximizing evidence and minimizing Venetia's role.
You testified at Mr. Cross's trial you were trained in the Reed technique, didn't you? I didn't. I promised I would try to take her tone if I could. What do you mean if you could? She knew she was going to have to go to court, and I did tell her that if the judge might let her go home I couldn't promise her what the judge was going to. So at that point, she was under arrest, but she was not under arrest. Then she not go home. She had to go see the judge. It was a juvenile court hearing.
So you picked her up for the purpose of the juvenile court hearing?
No, she agreed to come back with us to be interviewed.
2 alleged phone calls come up during her testimony. Kent says she talked to Stubblefield on the phone in 2016 after Venetia recanted elements of her testimony. Stubblefield also testified a call with Kent in 2020 or 2021. She said she spoke with both Michelle Kent and prosecutor Barbara Whaley on that call. Kent denies the call ever happened when Whaley asks her about it.
Did you call Venetia Stubblefield in 2020, 2021, asking her about the Quincy Cross case?
I thought it was strange that Barbara Whaley could be asking Michelle Kent questions about a call where she's theoretically implicated. Here's Maggie Freeling.
I've asked the attorneys, why, if this woman is being implicated, is she still there? No one really knows. I guess the judge just doesn't believe that. I don't know. Ultimately, she works in the AG's office. She's assistant attorney general. These were KBI agents in her office. At minimum, I just think she shouldn't be on the case. And then you have witnesses on the stand saying that she's on phone calls where they were forced to lie. I genuinely don't understand why she's there.
I was surprised to see Miss Whaley as the attorney. I think that she is a very hard fighting prosecutor. She's very good. I mean, she is very good. I don't remember her name ever coming up as a witness. And that's one thing that attorneys are very careful about. If I'm going to, if I want a witness interviewed, then I get an investigator to do it. Because if I'm there, then the problem is I make myself a witness and I can be subpoenaed. She's prosecuting this because this was her baby, and I think she wants to see it through.
Sam Steger testifies later in the afternoon. 20 years ago, he was the lead investigator for KSP. He's the other officer that stepped in to help Michelle Kent interview Venetia. He also interviewed Shamika Powell. Remember, she said Quincy Cross confessed to the murder while she was out for a walk with a friend. Both the prosecution and the defense asked Steger for details of his interviews. Here's prosecutor Barbara Whaley.
Did you ever threaten a witness when you're during an interview?
No, ma'am.
Did you tell a witness what? Did you write out and repeat, give a witness a script, what to say?
No, ma'am.
At trial?
No, ma'am. I would never do that.
During any of the interviews that you were with Kentucky Girls Investigations, Investigator Fleetwise, Bob Benito, then you'd hear them making threats to witnesses.
No, ma'am.
Did you hear them tell witnesses what to say?
No, ma'am. It's like they can put a piece of, a puzzle together. You have to put those pieces together, and if they don't fit in that puzzle, then they don't belong there. And if the puzzle fits, and the evidence shows that, then you build your puzzle that way. You build your case, piece by piece.
The defense questioned whether Steger had ever told witnesses about evidence from the case.
During your interrogations, you gave several of the witnesses lots of pieces of those puzzles, didn't you?
Like I planted that in their mind? Is that what you're No, ma'am.
You don't believe that you did that?
No, ma'am.
In your interrogations of Venetia and Shamika, did you ever tell them what other witnesses were allegedly saying?
If I found them to be factual of some nature, maybe that could have been conversation. I don't know, but in an interviewing technique, that could have been possible.
Is that a scare tactic?
I don't know that you call it a scare tactic. It's factual tactic.
Are you trying to pull out certain information?
Trying to pull out certain information from people that you already know that they know.
How do you already know that they know?
From other witnesses.
So you're relying on other witnesses that you believe to be true?
Sometimes, absolutely. Yeah, sometimes you have to rely on other witnesses to get information, yes.
Victoria Caldwell, the star witness in the 2008 trial, arrived in Mayfield midway through Sam Steger's testimony. We'll get to her testimony in just a moment. First, though, there's one more witness, called by the prosecution. The night Jessica Currin was killed, LaToya Sender says she was hanging out at her mom's house, playing cards with Jessica, Venetia Stubblefield, and another friend. About 11 p.m., they try to find Jessica a ride home. When they're not able to find a car, Jessica decides to walk.
Center and Venetia head back to LaToya's mom's house. Here's prosecutor Barbara Whaley.
What did Venetia do and you got back to your house? Well, hold on. What's the best thing? Okay, well, she didn't stay at your house that night, did she? Yes. Okay, you remember testifying at the trial? I remember that from 17 to 26, I always said that Venetia stayed at my house.
The prosecution plays a clip from Center's 2008 testimony.
Venetia went back into your house with you?
Yes.
Did she ask her mom if she could stay the night with
you? Yes.
She left your house?
Yes.
About how long was it after you all got back that she left your house?
I don't know what time it was. Was that your testimony at trial? You did not see her anymore that night. I'm saying this is the testimony they wanted me to say. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
LaToya Center recants her testimony on the stand.
This is the truth, whether you want to hear it or not.
Let me stop you just a minute. There are legal consequences. I think this is another recanting witness. There are legal consequences to this. Have you spoken to a lawyer about the legal consequences? Did you say no, you need to, obviously? All right, I think we should take a break for a few minutes.
I asked Emily Rourke if there are specific rights for someone called to testify in a hearing like this.
You don't necessarily have legal rights. If you're just a witness and you're not implicated in any way, the problem with this case is that so many of the witnesses are also defendants or implicated in the criminal offense in some way. Now, just what she said to a police officer in state court is not a crime. It's not perjury. Just change her story. But if she testified under oath in a trial, then it is perjury.
Center's testimony resumes.
Unfortunately, nobody knew that you intended to recant or were going to recant what you said at trial. But that's what's happened. You've testified differently from what you testified to at the trial of Mr. Cross. And so my ruling is that you waive the right to refuse to answer questions about that.
Center sticks to her new testimony. She says Venetia stayed at her house the whole night, and she describes pressure from investigators.
Because when I was 25, pregnant with my daughter, the KBI came and interviewed me at my house, and they threatened me, coerced me, and everything else.
And what was it?
I was pregnant with my daughter, so they said I would have my daughter in jail and go to shelter. I did change my story because Venetia already confessed to it.
She also says investigators turned the recording on and off. She doesn't remember specifically who was in the room during her questioning. Center says she gave a signed statement once Currin's body was found. But she initially says that was the following day after the card game. Jessica's body wasn't found until a couple days later.
I was never there, never witnessed anything. Okay. But the dear guy, he was known to do a lot of things, but he also bragged about it, what he did to Jessica though. But they kind of brushed him off. It was like they wanted Quincy for so long.
Do you recognize the female voice in that clip that we just played for you?
Yes.
Victoria Caldwell's testimony comes after an interview with ABC's 2020. The episode aired ahead of the evidentiary hearing and features Victoria walking back her 2008 testimony.
None of it was true.
Why should we believe you now after all the lies?
One allegation in the pre-hearing in October that Caldwell had a child with one of the KBI investigators. Her interview in the evidentiary hearing never made it to that point. On the stand, Caldwell confirmed it was her voice on the recording you heard a few moments ago. But she stops there.
Did you hear people talking about Jessica Currin's murder at the school?
Yeah, I'm going to exercise my rights to remain silent.
And are you invoking your Fifth Amendment privilege, ma'am?
Yes.
Did you hear any family members talk about Jessica Currin's murder?
I didn't. I'm going to exercise my rights to remain silent.
In July of 2000, did you know Quincy Cross?
Again, I'm going to exercise my rights to remain silent.
Victoria Caldwell refuses to answer any further questions. I talked to Maggie Freeling again after all was said and done on the second day of the hearing.
I'm pretty surprised she didn't testify. I am surprised because she's really good friends with Shamika. You know, Shamika has her location, like they knew where each other were today. I think Shamika really felt and thought that they were going into this together, that like, I say girl power because that's how I see it, right? Like they just were standing up for each other. And I know afterwards they felt betrayed by Victoria again. Tamra, her cousin, felt betrayed by her again.
Despite some disappointments, Maggie says she's hopeful.
This has been 25 years for some of them. I can't imagine how relieving it is. And they have each other in this too. That was a really beautiful moment. I walked outside and that's when I talked to them. Venetia, Tamra, Shamika, they were all sitting together, holding, hugging each other. Like they're really, I got this vibe that they all got screwed over 2 decades ago together. And now they're all coming together and saying like, no, you won't do this to us anymore. And it felt really powerful.
A third day of the hearing is set for 9 a.m. on December 18th. Maggie says KBI agents Bob O'Neill and Lee Wise are expected to testify. Reporting for this episode by Ariana Allen, Ben Overby, and me. Video and sound by Mason Watkins, Jason Thomason, and Ethan Patterson. Ethan also provided editing support. Thank you for listening.